My name is Gary Yadjhian. I'm the owner, along with my wife, of the Pickering Horse Center, and we're here hosting the Pickering Reining Classic. We host a number of horse shows of different disciplines every year, and this happens to be the reining one. Back in 1978, a friend of mine was into reining, and I saw it for the first time, and it completely blew me away in terms of the athleticism of these horses, so I had to get involved. I've served as president of the ORHA. I've served as an NRHA judge for numerous years. I've traveled around the world judging and so on. But yeah, I've been into this game for almost 40 years now. In its origins is back in the cowboy days where everybody used to break their horses to a high degree in order to ride the fences, to work the cattle, to work the ranch. And it got to be this sort of one-upmanship of my horse can do this better than yours and so on, until it became an organized sport where the different criteria were presented in a pattern that were tested with like I say, a criteria that the judges could work with that has both an objective and a subjective component to it. Judging is always comprised of what's known as a maneuver score and a penalty score. So the maneuvers are things like the spins, the trademark sliding stops, rollbacks, that's all one maneuver. The figure eights with demonstrating a lead change in both directions is a maneuver. Circles that demonstrate large fast circles and small slow circles, that's another separate maneuver. And certainly every pattern also has a backup. So all of those are put together in a pattern. Each one of those is judged individually. And so the judge has to assess in half-point increments, going from 0 denoting an average performance to +1.5 judging an exceptional performance for that maneuver, and the other end of the scale as well in half-point increments down to -1.5 denoting a very poor maneuver. And so the judge assesses each maneuver, and while the horse is doing a maneuver, even in the case where it does a good maneuver, it can still incur a penalty. Something like a good set of circles that are demonstrating a high degree of difficulty, large fast circles, small slow circles demonstrated with smoothness and finesse, but the horse might fall out of lead for a stride. That would incur a 1-point penalty in spite of the judge saying, that was a +1/2 set of circles. So that's where the objective and subjective component comes in. Every horse enters the ring with a score of 70, and then the score either increases or decreases depending on what's happened within those 8 maneuvers. There are a series of patterns, and they're updated year to year, usually 11 patterns that you choose from, and the show has the freedom to assess a certain pattern for a certain class, and it would change from show to show. But there's a book in the rule book, the patterns are there, so everybody knows the patterns, and you just simply know if I'm riding the open division today, I'm riding pattern 3, for example. The freestyle, similar to the cur in dressage, is put to music and can have a theme with costumes and so on that is sort of designed to have more entertainment value. So the average person in the stand that might not be a connoisseur of reining would still appreciate it as entertainment, where it's choreographed to music, there's a theme behind it, maybe even a storyline. And you'll see that at the highest level at the largest shows, the Quarter Horse Congress or the NRHA Futurity, and of course it can be offered at the weekend shows like this one as well. A reining horse, in fact, the whole reining industry has evolved tremendously since when I got into it in 1978. It's become from a relatively crude discipline to a very sophisticated discipline, with the horses demonstrating the decades of quality breeding that has gone to specifically designing a reining horse. Reining is a discipline open to all breeds, but it is dominated by quarter horses. You'll see paint horses, you'll see Appaloosas, certainly some Arabians, and I've judged all over the world where I've even had German halflingers doing reining. That said, you need a short-coupled animal that's very athletic. The discipline tends to really tax the hocks. They have to really be elevated in the shoulders, light in the front end, smooth and easy to keep in a bridle. They have to be in the center of the bridle with a soft rein. And the biggest thing I would say a reining horse needs is a good mind. Because of the nature that we are tested in patterns, the horses get wise to the patterns, so they start to anticipate what's coming next. The most willingly guided horse always waits for the signal instead of guessing in advance as to what you're going to ask. So I would say the mind would be the most important. So whenever you're dealing with training in any equine discipline, you want to have the four-legged partner be best suitable for whatever discipline. So you're not going to have typically a reining horse at 17 hands. It's just not conducive to the moves they have to make. So physically, conformation-wise, they have to be built for the sport. And that's usually a short-coupled horse, usually around 15 hands, 15-2, in that range. They have to be, like I described earlier, very willing to learn and very willing to wait to be asked because of the nature of the patterns that we ride. That said, the training is in a lot of regards similar to dressage, where there's a lot of repetition and there's a lot of body parts that are being controlled and manipulated, and the horse gradually buys into the different cues. A sliding stop, eventually, in the show ring, is done in one hand with a loose rein, with the rider pushing their legs forward and saying the word whoa, and the horse goes to the ground. Well, the first time you sit on the 2-year-old or 3-year-old and you say whoa, that's not going to happen. So it's through the repetitious process of doing that and turning them into the wall, into a quick rollback and so on, and saying the word, that eventually they learn to get their legs underneath them. That, coupled with the special shoes that we put on, enable them to slide until the sliding stop gets developed. Or in a spin, the first time you sit on a horse and you ask for a spin, the horse doesn't know what that means. So really it's about saying, I'm going to position your body, I'm going to ask your head and neck to move to the inside, start crossovers with your front legs, and try and keep your hind legs stationary. And it's a step or two, and then you walk out of the circle. And you keep repeating that until the step or two becomes maybe a full rotation. And over a series of months, it starts to look like a spin. Once all the working parts are where they should be, that's when you add speed. And that's the only time you add speed, when everything is working correctly. With the added speed, that's when it becomes recognizable as a spin. And that's, like I say, one of the trademarks in reining. Understanding the sport, it's one of those that usually attracts people because of those signature trademark moves that are unique to reining. For example, the spins that are done at high speed, or the sliding stops. In order to really understand how the scoring goes, that's a little bit more in depth. And that's what usually takes years for people to really get a handle on. For example, people get enthralled when they see a horse gallop down and do a sliding stop. And they're sometimes confused that the score might not be as high as they thought it might be. And that's because it's not only the sliding stop that's judged. The whole running around the side of the pen, the whole approach to the sliding stop itself, and the rollback is all one score. I would always recommend that they watch the open class. That's where the professionals and the best quality horses are being demonstrated. And that's sort of what everybody aspires to be able to do. No different than the Grand Prix horses in jumping or dressage. You want to see the best. That said, not everybody can ride those horses at that level. So we have all sorts of entry classes that would invite the newcomer into the reining pen. The principal organization sort of that looks after reining worldwide is the National Reining Horse Association. They are situated in Oklahoma, and they have affiliates all over the world. So for example, here we are in Ontario. The affiliate for the National Reining Horse Association is the Ontario Reining Horse Association. So this show would be sanctioned by both the National Reining Horse Association and the Ontario Reining Horse Association. So that would be where I'd get the information, is from your local affiliate.
Can you talk to me a little bit about what it means to the sport to be part of the FEI now?
I think more than anything, it changes the culture of the sport. The sport is very much something that morphed from being a cowboy sport in one's ranch to being an international event. That said, you now have the opportunity to showcase these quality horses in a world arena as opposed to your backyard, so to speak. So the value of the horses, the breeding programs, the judging programs, everything is heightened by that. At the same time, there's more accountability that comes into the sport. Things like drug testing are now evolving in our sport, which we haven't had for many years. The advantages to it are mostly monetarily. That is to say, you try and get a Grand Prix horse that's competitive in the jumper ring, you could be into the millions of dollars. We haven't quite reached that in reining, but the value of the horses is escalating daily.
Do you find, since it's gone to be an FEI sport, that the popularity has increased?
Interestingly enough, it has done so more internationally than locally, because being a sport that sort of had its genesis in North America, we already had lots of numbers in the US and in Canada reining. So those numbers have stayed somewhat the same or maybe increased a little bit, but internationally there's over 16 countries, perhaps even more, that are reining now. The ones that have sort of risen to the top from not even being in existence really are countries like Austria, Belgium, Italy, Germany. Italy and Germany were the first international countries or countries outside the North America that got into the sport. And today they have sophisticated breeding programs and coaching and training programs that would rival to what we have in North America. So they've risen to the top, but countries like Austria, France, Belgium, they're right around the corner. Reining, because it's morphed from an organization that was in the U.S. and has now become an international sport, has its challenges. For example, a country like Canada to field competitive teams, because we're really working independently of our national sports organization. That is to say, reiners aren't typically members, sport license holders of Equine Canada. And for that reason, they're sort of outside of the fold, whereas all the other FEI disciplines work within the auspices of that national governing body. So there's a lot of challenges in the national body being responsible for reining and yet reining working independently from them. So how we build those bridges is going to be integral over the next decade in terms of the growth of reining and our participation as Canadians in the international arena.